You're listening to the Chapter a Day Bible Study. I'm John Stange, and today we're in Deuteronomy 12, worshiping God His way, not ours. Deuteronomy 12 marks a turning point in Moses' instruction to Israel. The people are on the edge of the Promised Land, and Moses is preparing them for what life will look like once they settle there. Up to this point, much of the focus has been on remembering what God has done and renewing their commitment to Him. Now, the emphasis shifts toward how they're to worship Him rightly in a land that's filled with competing beliefs and competing practices. Moses begins with a clear and urgent command. The people must completely destroy the places where the nations they're displacing worshipped their gods. That would be the high places, the sacred pillars, the Asherim, the carved images. All of it must be torn down and removed. Verses 2 and 3 say, "You shall surely destroy all the places where the nations whom you shall dispossess served their gods. You shall tear down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and burn their Asherim with fire." This wasn't just about physical cleanup. It was about spiritual clarity. God knew how easily His people could be influenced, and if they left those places intact, their hearts would slowly drift. God isn't only concerned with outward obedience, by the way. He's protecting their hearts from divided loyalty. Instead of worshiping anywhere they chose, Israel was instructed to worship in the place the Lord would choose. This is one of the central themes of the chapter. Verse 5 says, "But you shall seek the place that the Lord your God will choose, to put His name and make His habitation there. There you shall go." Worship was no longer to be scattered and self-directed. It would be centered, intentional, and defined by God Himself. The people were to bring their offerings, their sacrifices, their tithes, and their gifts to that specific place. And interestingly, Moses describes this not as a burden, but as a joy. Verse 7 says, "And there you shall eat before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice, you and your households." True worship, when it's done God's way, leads to joy. It isn't restrictive in a lifeless sense. It's life-giving because it aligns us with reality. God knows what honors Him, and He knows what ultimately satisfies us. Now, at the same time, Moses gives them a strong warning. The people must not imitate the worship practices of the surrounding nations. In verses 30 and 31, we read this, "Take care that you be not ensnared to follow them. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way." This is a temptation that hasn't gone away. Even today, it's easy to blend cultural ideas with true worship. We can drift into shaping worship around personal preference instead of God's revealed will. Israel was being told clearly, don't do that. Don't try to worship the true God using false methods. It's disturbing to have to acknowledge this, but the pagan nations even sacrificed their sons and daughters to their gods. And in our own way, that's still an issue today. That level of distortion reveals how far human hearts can wander when truth is abandoned. God's instructions weren't arbitrary. They were protective and good. So how does this chapter point us to Jesus? Well, first, the idea of a central place of worship ultimately finds its fulfillment in Christ. In the Old Testament, God chose a physical location where His presence would dwell among His people. Eventually, this became the temple in Jerusalem. But in the New Testament, Jesus makes a key statement about worship. In John chapter 4, verses 21 to 24, He explains that a time is coming when worship will not be tied to a specific mountain or location. Instead, true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. Jesus Himself becomes the meeting place between God and humanity. He is the true temple. In John 2:19, Jesus says this, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." He wasn't talking about a building. He was speaking about His body. Through His death and resurrection, Jesus made a way for us to approach God directly. We don't travel to a physical location to find God's presence. Through Christ, we have access to Him wherever we are. Now, second, Jesus fulfills the sacrificial system described in this chapter. The offerings Israel brought to the chosen place were meant to atone for sin and express their devotion, but those sacrifices were temporary and incomplete. Jesus, on the other hand, offered himself once and for all. In fact, Hebrews 10:12 says it this way, "But when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God." All the sacrifices described in Deuteronomy 12 were pointing forward to Jesus. He is the perfect Lamb who takes away the sin of the world. Now, third, this chapter challenges us to examine how we worship. Are we approaching God on His terms, or are we shaping worship around what feels comfortable or familiar to us? And that question matters more than we might realize. Through Jesus, we're invited into a relationship with God that's both personal and reverent. We're given freedom, but it's not a freedom to redefine truth. It's a freedom to live in alignment with it. Deuteronomy 12 ends with a simple but weighty instruction. Verse 32 says this, "Everything that I command you, you shall be careful to do. You shall not add to it or take from it." That call still speaks to us today. God hasn't left us to guess how to know Him. He's revealed Himself clearly and most fully in Jesus. When we come to Christ, we aren't just adopting a new set of practices. We're entering into true worship, the kind that leads to life, joy, and a deep, abiding relationship with the living God. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Chapter a Day Bible Study. For more resources to help you in your walk with Christ and your understanding of the Bible, please visit my website at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And if you'd like to partner with me by becoming a supporter of this ministry, you'll see a few options to do so, again, at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com or in the description of this episode. As always, thank you for your prayers, thank you for your support, and thank you for your willingness to share this content with others. Have a great day, and I'll see you again right here tomorrow.